everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today, unfortunately, I do have some pretty bad news to share with you guys. Pixar's new film, Elemental, just came out, and boy, is it not doing well. It made only $29 million in its opening weekend, which is worse than the opening for The Good Dinosaur, Cars 2, in the freaking first Toy Story movie that came out in 1995. So yeah, Elemental's not doing well, like at all. And to be honest, I'm really not that surprised. When the first Elemental teaser came out, a lot of people were making fun of it for looking very generic. And then when I reacted to the trailer myself, I thought it looked like a Zootopia knockoff, like it just looked like the same thing, just reskinned with elements instead of animals. I'm saying all that just to say that I'm not surprised at all that the movie is bombing. This movie had a lot of negative buzz up until release. But now that I've seen the film, I can say that I do think this movie is a lot better than the marketing made it seem. I actually really enjoyed this movie, but at the same time, even though I liked it, I still understand why it flopped anyway. Let me explain. Now, the first problem I had with Elemental, and I think one of the main reasons why I think a lot of people stayed away from seeing this in theaters, is because I still think it does have a very generic story. What do I mean by generic story? Well, let me compare it to its closest counterpart, Zootopia. Both movies center around a young female protagonist, with Ember in Elemental and Judy Hopps in Zootopia, who happen to live in a New York-style bustling city full of different creatures who represent different races. With Zootopia, it's animals, and with Elements, it's elements. While attempting to prove oneself, they meet a young male protagonist who they grow a bond with over the course of the film. Meanwhile, they investigate something's mysteriously going wrong in the city that directly affects one of the lead protagonists. Both have weak villains that are directly involved with the mystery of our main leads. And they even have similar hairstyles. I mean, just look at this. They both even have the same clerical worker character who is slow at his job and hates his life. And the similarities with this movie don't just stop with Zootopia. There's also a generational trauma storyline between Ember and her father, where she's scared to live up to the expectations of her dad, who then felt like he couldn't live up to the expectations of his dad, and so on and so forth. You've seen this same storyline in a lot of Disney movies lately. And if you don't believe me, just watch Turning Red, which is a story about a daughter who struggles with familial expectations and wants to be her own person. Or you could watch Strange World, which is a story about a son who struggles with familial expectations and wanting to be his own person. Or you could just watch Luca, which is a story about a fish boy who struggles with familial expectations and wanting to be his own person. Or just a thought, you could watch Coco, which is a story about a little boy who struggles with his familial expectations and wanting to be his own person. I think you're starting to get the point here. Elemental would be Disney's 5th straight movie in 5 years that essentially has the same storyline. At this point, it just feels very repetitive and stale. Now, I know that the story of Elemental is technically based off of the director's own childhood, but honestly, as they were hammering out the story, I feel like someone should have raised their hand and went like, hey, I think we just made like 4 other movies with the exact same plot, because I really think that's what's hurting this movie, like, first and foremost. And because the story was so familiar and very predictable, it did feel like the movie was just plodding along to the next plot point that you already knew was coming. There was really no surprises in this movie at all. And then there was a poor little kid behind me that was complaining that he was really bored because the movie was really slow, and I kind of felt bad for the kid. That being said, I did like the immigration metaphor. There's a whole subplot of the movie about how Ember's parents are the first generation of immigrants to Element City, and I did find this to be an interesting dynamic to add to the family, and the relationship between Ember and her father turned out to be my favorite thing in the whole movie. I really wish the marketing for Elemental really doubled down on the immigration father-daughter aspect of this movie, because I feel like it was those storylines that were the most unique things about this movie, because everything else about it you have seen before. Instead, the trailers really seem to focus on hitting a lot of the same beats and lines we've seen before in other films. Like, for example,
this shop is dream of our family. Someday it'll all be yours.
Why does anyone get to tell you what you can do in your life?
Ember, I see a change in you.
I've been trying to fill my father's shoes, but I never once asked what I wanted to do.
I mean, you just heard all of these lines before. Every time the movie tries to do something a little bit fresh and a little bit different, mainly with its immigration storyline. It cuts away to random cutaway gags between the elements that don't really make a lot of sense if the elements aren't supposed to mix. Or it goes to like some really generic scene that you've seen 1,000 times in 1,000 Pixar movies and you're just like, okay, whatever. Like, I don't even think these characters are really gonna be that remembered. I think the most memorable character in this movie is Wade, and I had a very, very love-hate relationship with this character. Wade is like single-handedly the reason so many things go wrong in Ember's life, and he constantly blames Ember for it. Like, I don't understand it. I'm sorry, but Wade got on my nerves like a lot in this film, like a lot. I'm not gonna lie. I did like the ongoing crying gag, especially with his family. I thought that was hilarious. They made me laugh every time. That was also something I really felt like they could have hyped up more in the marketing. This movie could be genuinely funny at times, which you would not know in any of the trailers, because all they did was like focused on like the weird gimmicky gags of like all the elements, like and how they would interact with each other, which I don't think is nearly as interesting as Pixar thinks it is. I thought Ember herself was also a pretty generic stand-in for any rebellious teen or young adult that wants to do their own thing and fight against their family. You've seen the same kind of rebellious girl before. I also did like the romance storyline between Ember and Wade. I did think that they made a very steamy couple. But compared to other Disney couples like Rapunzel and Eugene, or even Kristoff and Anna, and these just can't compare. And above all, I think the worst part about this movie, and what I really think could have just given this movie more spice to make it more interesting and stand out more, is if it had a villain. Yet again, Disney gives us a film without a villain. And I'm tired of it, okay? I just want a good villain. Like, I just saw Across the Spiderverse, and they had a great villain in that movie. I thought the Spot was super creepy, but also super well written, and I think it made that movie a lot more intense and fun because they had a good villain. This movie, the villain is Ember's anxiety over disappointing her father. Like, technically, yeah, there was also like the Cloud Puff lady Gale. Like, she's sort of a villain, but she doesn't really do anything seriously or anything really impactful in this movie, so I don't even really count her as a villain. The real villain of this movie is Ember's internal struggle, and I feel like Pixar has been doing that a lot lately. Like, they've been turning the villain into like your own internal emotions instead of like an actual villain the protagonist has to face. And I also am getting a little bit tired of that, because I think this movie really could have been taken up a notch if it just had a really good villain. I just feel like that was missing from the story. I think it could have made it a lot more interesting and stand out more. Like, don't get me wrong, I know I'm being very negative on this film, but I actually do like the movie. Like I said, I think that the romance story is very cute. I don't think it's a bad movie at all. In fact, I think it's better than a lot of Pixar's other recent films. If you liked Turning Red, if you liked Luca, you're probably gonna like this movie as well. Overall, I'd give it like a solid 7 out of 10, so it's not bad, but I do think it exists on just the fine scale, and I feel like a Pixar has been doing a lot of just fine. They haven't really been doing the extraordinary stuff like they used to, and I feel like this is more of just meh, and I'm kind of tired of getting meh from Pixar. I think that Pixar needs to start being a little bit more bold in their storytelling. I think they're really sticking to a lot of the same safe tropes and storylines that we've seen over and over again. I also think that they need to be more bold with their animation style. Now that we have movies like Spiderverse and even the new Ninja Mutant Turtles movie, I feel like there's really no excuse to still be getting like the same sort of lean animation that we've always been getting from them. They need to add a villain, make these movies a bit more spicy. I think they need to make their characters more memorable overall. But again, it's fine. I hate that. I feel like a lot of commentary and criticism of movies now, it's like either it's amazing or it's terrible. And I don't think Elemental is either of those. I think it's just fine. And those are the reasons why, even though I like the movie, I can understand why it's not really driving people to theaters right now. Well, what did you guys think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Please let me know in the comments what you think. Have you seen Elemental? Do you like the movie? Please let me know. Again, as always, please make sure you like the video. It really does help the channel. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!